Does UCLA basketball actually fit the mold of a national contender this year? According to KenPom, they actually do.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen every day, and it's your team each and every day. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. And hey, this episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head on over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert. All right. And where we get started today is I've discussed contender, pretender. What's the identity of this UCLA team? What's the possibility this team could go on a run, right? Is this a team similarly built to that one that went on the Final Four run 4 years ago now, which is crazy to say? Or is this a team that's going to flame out and be, underwhelming in the first round? Any of those options, depending on the matchups, depending on the seeding, the location, are available for UCLA. Yet, I came across a post about the likes of KenPom with the last national champions since 2002. Every single national champion since 2002 has either been top 40 in defense and top 25 so top 40 in offense and top 25 in defense, okay, according to KenPom. All right, means you're a pretty good offensive team and elite defensive team, all right? Every national champion has had top 40 offense, top 25 defense. And under Mick Cronin, generally his calling card, you're going to fit one of those. UCLA almost every year fits the mold of a team that has a top 25 defense. And this year, as much as we get frustrated, they have somewhat of an inside-out game, not the most consistent as who's going to come in and score every game, who can shoot. But the Bruins, according to the metrics, according to the KenPom, are not elite, but good offensively. Top 40 is pretty good when you think that there's so many basketball teams, but that's more analytically elite. Eye test, we say a little bit less. But according to KenPom, Mick Cronin's literal college basketball, thing that he lives by. Doesn't like the net. He loves KenPom and fitting those analytics. UCLA's in that mold. Who are the other teams in this mold right now? This is a tweet from yesterday, I'm noticing. Who fits the mold at the moment with this top 40 offense, top 25 defense via KenPom? Duke, Auburn, Houston, Florida, Tennessee. Those are 5 of the teams listed. Everybody is all on the SEC bandwagon. Duke clearly looks like a title contender. And then you got Houston, who plays elite defense, and because of that can get easy runouts for baskets. Those are all 5 teams you wouldn't disagree with. Okay, who's the next one? Marquette. Okay, interesting one. Wouldn't have thought Marquette's on that list, but okay, you mix in there. That's 6 of the teams on this list that are in the top 40 offense and top 25 defensively on the KenPom. Michigan State, Big Ten champion. Okay, is this the team that Tom Izzo is going to take to the Final Four, go on a run? UCLA had to battle to beat them at Pauley Pavilion. Both teams were battling the maybe beginnings / working through norovirus, not entirely sure. Iowa State, when they're healthy, they're elite. And when they're healthy, tough to beat, okay? Iowa State, Maryland. I believe in Maryland, right? Maryland is kind of like a similar equal to UCLA. Beat UCLA down in an emotional affair, which was not that big of a beatdown until later in the game when UCLA couldn't get buckets and Cronin's like, forget this. I'm going to get ejected and make a point, make a stand. That's when UCLA played some of their worst basketball. Everything was going on in the greater LA area in early January, but Maryland fits the mold. Clemson, the only team in the ACC to beat Duke this year. Okay, Louisville. After all last couple of years when Louisville struggled, they've come in, assembled quite a team via the portal. They're really good, okay? Then there's UCLA, one of 12 teams that are very good defensively and pretty solid offensively. And I know we get frustrated about how this team travels and how it goes. All Cronin cares about in the NCAA tournament, he talked about his latest media availability prior to the team heading to Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament. UCLA wants to have an early weekend near home, Seattle or Denver, and hopefully in the second weekend be closer in the West Regional. but you can go in the Big Ten tournament and maybe deal with those things, okay? But for UCLA, now you look at nationally contending. Who are the last couple of champions? All right, you got UConn. You're like, okay, UConn. Oh. And you're like, wait, Kansas? Oh, yeah, there's Kansas. And you're thinking about all these teams that have won national championships since 2002. You mix in UConn, Baylor, Virginia, Villanova, Duke, North Carolina, Louisville, if you count the vacated one, Kentucky, Kansas, Florida, Maryland, and Syracuse. They've all, in the last 23 years, fit this mold. The analytically solid offense and the extremely good defense. And we know Mick Cronin's calling card is defense, defense, defense. And one thing that helps analytically is more opportunities to get points per possession. How do you do that? By getting shots up, getting rebounds. And UCLA is not the best rebounding team, but it's when you force turnovers and you also don't turn it over. That's got to help UCLA a lot, that when they played Michigan State, when they went on that big winning streak, 7 straight games after having their worst play of the year followed by some of their best, they've won quite a few games lately. Despite a couple of up and down late game performances, yes, the analytics aren't necessarily going to take into effect those late game free throw shooting woes. That's where the eye test and the ice in your veins comes in March. UCLA overall fits the mold of a team that can go on a run. Contender, get into the second weekend, get to a third weekend potentially. That's why Cronin assembled the team the way he did. All right, he's had his big centers. He's got a Damara. We hope he gets more time. We've discussed this ad nauseum. Then there's William Kyle, who can help come off the bench, be an athletic big. You got Tyler Bilodeau, who's actually shooting it pretty well from 3 this year. Eric Daly Jr., who's one of the most, if not the most important offensive piece for UCLA. When he does well and shoots well, UCLA does not lose. Sky Clark, we've seen a lot of good from him. We haven't seen him take over a game like his Louisville numbers, but he is somebody who is very important. You mix in the other guys like the Sebastian Max, the elite defense of Kobe Johnson, an all Big Ten defensive team member. You've got the defensive pieces, the size, and maybe enough scrappy rebounders to make this team go that you look, what Cronin thinks about in his team, what he looks at analytically when it comes to deflections, how the team's shooting, can they get the rebounds, can they feed the ball in the post, do his guards not turn it over? He's going by the KENPOM. And you look at it and you're like, wait a minute. Cronin probably isn't going to speak this into the public eye. Like, okay. And there's still things to work on, because to be a team like this every night, you've got to be elite. And when you face some of these teams in the NCAA tournament, you're like, okay, you got to beat them. And that's why the Big Ten tournament is so important. The bracketology that continues to update day by day, hour by hour almost, is extremely important. Why is it so important? UCLA is one of these 12 teams that fits the mold, that's won a championship since the turn of the century, since we turned into 2002, basically, and on. All the champions are good defensively and do enough off. That includes the Virginias. That includes teams you didn't think were that good offensively. Oh, or that team was good defensively. Yeah, they fit the mold. By the end of the year, they played good defense for a final month and a half, and were scrappy enough to change the analytics and get to the top 40 offensively and top 25 defensively. And we know when UCLA plays really good, they force a lot of turnovers, one of the best in the country. And when they played extremely well offensively, they can hit it from downtown. They've got a unicorn in the paint in a Diamata. They can mix and match those lineups a little bit. And they've got some point paints potentially with various different players, from Bilodeau to Mata to William Kyle to slashing guards. They've got what it takes. Now, the consistency is what's important, and how they match up in the tournament. How's that going to look? The Big Ten tournament, let's talk about that. Who their potential opponent might be, and what a win or two might do for UCLA's rest, location, and first-round opponent, where you might have to play one of these top 12 teams by the KenPom rankings. If you look at, these teams might win a national championship, and you might play them in the first or second round. What does that even mean? I'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Texas was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Texas is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get a real-time update on their progress so you can focus on your day. an expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, and everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available TurboTax Live full service real-time updates. Only available in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, cruising on here. We're talking Big Ten tournament, what a win or two means. I've gone over this, but let's talk about what's the right way to play this Big Ten tournament, potential quad one opportunity for UCLA, regardless of who they play, and what the latest bracketology looks like. So I've spent the last few minutes acknowledging that UCLA could be a contender. Whether you believe, whether you think the eye test, whether you think it's all baloney, UCLA is legitimately a team based on how every team in the last 2+ decades has won a championship. They fit the mold. Now, is it going to be one of those other 12 who I've listed? Let's rename those right now. Duke, Auburn, Houston, Florida, Tennessee, Marquette, Michigan State, Iowa State, Maryland, Clemson, Louisville, and UCLA. Notice there's 3 Big Ten teams. UCLA went 1-1 against those teams. Quite a few ACC teams, some Big 12. And then you mix in an SEC, of course, a Big East in there. And, okay. That's what UCLA is contending with. Teams who are top 40 offensively, top 25 defensively in the KENPOM. Okay, now what does UCLA have ahead of them? Potentially, based on the results of the Big Ten tournament, it's either going to be Wisconsin, who had a day rest, or Northwestern, who came out and got a win against Minnesota. Now, I would have loved for UCLA to face Minnesota, one, because I would think it would be a much easier game than Wisconsin or Northwestern, and for the fact that UCLA owes Minnesota a beatdown. Didn't happen. They don't get to get revenge. In the Big Ten, you generally get your one shot in basketball. In other leagues, in smaller conference eras, you would get a chance to go home and home and maybe get a third chance at a team. UCLA doesn't even get a second chance at Minnesota. So it's either a chance against Wisconsin, who would love their rematch against the Dia Mater and UCLA, or Northwestern, who just narrowly was almost getting that game to overtime against the Bruins when UCLA went to Northwestern. All right, Northwestern was on the bubble maybe. Now they need to win that Big Ten tournament. So what UCLA has in front of them is either a quad one opportunity with Wisconsin. That's a neutral site game. They win against Wisconsin at home as a quad one. Wisconsin sits top 20 in the net, number 19 overall. Would be another good win for UCLA, but they got the rest over Wisconsin because of the tiebreaker. Now let's take a look at what that game against Northwestern would look like. Northwestern currently sits in the 55th spot, all right? That doesn't include their win today, and that doesn't include a potential opportunity against Wisconsin tomorrow. So Northwestern got a quality win, a quad 2 win, I believe, is a neutral site win over Minnesota in Big Ten tournament play. If they beat a Big Ten quad 1 on a neutral site the night before they might play UCLA, Northwestern's rankings, their net rankings, could leap up to where UCLA Northwestern would rank as another quad 1 opportunity for UCLA, maybe number 10. So either way, they're either getting up to maybe 10 quad 1 opportunities, which is part of the reason why they do these conference tournaments, partly for the TV money, partly for the exposure, and maybe to give some of these lower tier teams in the conference a chance to go on a run like an NC State and maybe make a dream run to the Final Four, which is very rare, but it's possible. So UCLA is going to have a tough opponent on a neutral site, one of which is playing for their NCAA tournament lives. And then you've got Wisconsin, who'd probably like a win or two and then like to go home. So that begs the question, does UCLA want or need to win any of these Big Ten tournament games? Especially since it's not going to be an ugly loss. It might shake up your quad 1 resume, the record overall. But the committee has, I think in my mind, a fair idea of what they want to do with UCLA, what they want to do with these Big Ten teams. Because you see, there's like 3 or 4 of the other Big Ten teams ranked in the 4 seed line. And UCLA is currently stuck as a 6 seed, floating back and forth based on other teams' conference tournaments, wins and losses, and where they sit right now. So 2 chances potentially against either team that might be a quad 1. And then you mix in, does UCLA want to win this game? If you go on a run in the Big Ten tournament, you're playing Sunday, pretty much right up to the selection Sunday, right up to the show when they release the bracket. And oh, by the way, depending on the site you go, they might push you to a Thursday location. So you do all that to turn around on a Tuesday and fly right back. And Cronin was wondering, is that even worth it? Do you stay all week in Indianapolis and then take a much shorter flight to go east, to go back west to Denver, or just rest, do your laundry? It's not been decided. Of course, that's still public UC money. There's still a lot of things that even with the March Madness money and everything, do you stay those extra few days away from school? So the athletes, the student athletes that there still technically are, miss more school? It's all interesting, all very interesting indeed, that the more UCLA wins, the more it might hurt them in the NCAA tournament. What Cronin had talked about was flipping the switch. Win, keep going, but lose and your season's over, but getting practice at doing that. It's a good mindset. It's a good practice and potential. And I think ideally, a quad one win for UCLA, like beating Wisconsin, maybe less so with Northwestern, but if they do upset Wisconsin, could help the resume a little bit for the Bruins. One win might get them to the West Coast, at least an easier first-round matchup. 2 wins getting to the title game will certainly get them a top 4/5 seed and probably in the West side. Winning it all would be pretty freaking awesome. But then the downside is you win 2 games, you're playing Sunday and you have 3 days off and you still got to travel back home and then to your site and do all that prep while celebrating and learning where you're going to play. So there's upsides and downsides. Now, I think UCLA certainly needs to win a game. I'd love to prove that they can beat Wisconsin and not get stuck on a line below, which means it's time to take a look at the next bracketology update from Joe Lunardi. As I post this episode, Joe Lunardi has updated it at least 3 hours prior. So it doesn't include the late night games, or actually, pause, it has just been updated 20 minutes before. So it's been updated in the last 20 to 30 minutes with me looking at this, all right? It goes back and forth all the time as to where UCLA might go, where they might play. Very, very different. So here's the opportunity what Mick Cronin means about travel. The latest bracketology right now, within 30 minutes of me talking and this being updated, has UCLA in the South region, which means they'd go to Atlanta, East, goodness gracious. Their first round might be in Milwaukee, so it's like, why would you fly to Indianapolis and then go back west and then go to Milwaukee again when you could stay there, be time zone adjusted, and play a West Coast team like UCLA slated as a 6 seed, a rising 6 seed is that, and what they're currently slated to take on is San Diego State, who I think would be a great 11 seed matchup for UCLA. They had the scrimmage against them. UCLA, quote unquote, lost the scrimmage. Cronin would think differently because it's a bona fide practice. But they've already seen them in some mini game practice format. So I think Cronin would know how to coach up against a Mountain West team that's not a dominant San Diego State team. That's a team that's close to a last 4 in, last 4 buys scenario. So UCLA, if they stay in the Midwest, if they're going all the way in the Big Ten tournament, might as well stay in Wisconsin if you're going to go, might as well stay in Indianapolis or make your way to Wisconsin if you're going to go play in Milwaukee, right? Then the opportunity to play Texas A&M, who's a very good team, but lost to an Oregon, who's UCLA beaten twice this year. Oregon. Now, it's not the same thing. Texas A&M is good, but let's take a look at what UCLA's options to play would be. If you're a 6 seed, you win your first matchup, you're favored. Your next round, you'd be expected to play a 3 seed. Right now, Joe Lunardi has Texas A&M as a 3 seed. He's got Kentucky as a 3 seed. You mix in St. John's as a 3 seed. And Iowa State is a 3 seed. Well, St. John's, I would think, is the people's champion with Rick Pitino. It would be a fun coaching battle, basketball legacy. Maybe Pitino would outcoach Cronin. Maybe St. John's has some mojo. I don't know if you want to go play on the East Coast and play against St. John's. But, okay. Kentucky, Jackson Robinson is out. Okay. Interesting. I would like Kentucky as a 3 seed. Texas A&M would be an interesting 3 seed to draw in the second round. The other one, though, is Iowa State. And when I was looking at this bracket that's been updated at least 2 or 3 times today, there was a chance UCLA had to travel, play a team as the 11th seed, might have been San Diego State, and then you go play Iowa State, who, if we go back to that first segment, let's draw back for a second. Who are the teams that are top 40 offensively and top 25 defensively? Iowa State. The only reason that they're in a 3 seed right now is they got hurt, struggled a little bit in Big 12 play, and when they've been really healthy, they don't lose many games. Maybe 1 or 2 when they've been extremely healthy this season, right? That's why you wonder if Illinois could go on a run, the Big Ten team who's ranked. You got Iowa State, who is a contender. Analytically, is that team you're like a 3 seed that goes on a run in the tournament? That could be one of them. And if UCLA is slotted against them, mixed with travel, mixed with a strong first-round opponent, that's how UCLA, a team who could, according to the numbers, according to maybe some of the eye tests in good moments this year, go on a run deep into March, into April, could fall short in that first round. A win against the Big Ten team in the Big Ten tournament would push them probably closer to the West Coast and an easy first-round matchup. It's just how these committees are balancing. UCLA is either going to jump up 1 or 2 seed lines or stay at the 6 because they tend to avoid all these crazy conference matchups in the first weekend, all right? They want to wait at least until the Sweet 16. They have the flex model of rotating with the seeding, and if UCLA is going to be a 4 or 5 seed, then that means they're probably playing Arizona in Denver or Seattle in the first round. That's where Oregon, despite UCLA's 2 victories over Oregon, is sitting behind the 8 ball there. So you wonder, do you want to win, stay? If you're playing in Milwaukee, do you stay the extra weekend? Would you rather just lose and be like, I'm done with this, but be intense? But Cronin, you're like, all right, I'm going to throw like my C lineup out there. A good lineup, but then get some guys some minutes, like a Trent Perry in certain moments where he probably won't play him in the NCAA tournament. Or maybe he would. Or maybe he'll lean on a guy an extra 2 minutes in the Big Ten tournament that it won't get any moments in any minutes in the NCAA tournament. All things Cronin is grappling with right now as to how much does he want to compete for the Big Ten tournament. Is it worth it to go for it just to play West? Or do you just stay there, win it all, and then just live in Indianapolis for the rest of your Big Ten conference membership? A lot of things to deal with for Mick Cronin. Next, we're going to talk about the disrespect still being shown towards UCLA basketball, right? You got top 5, top 7 teams in the Big Ten. Who isn't ranked out of these top 7 teams in the Big Ten? I think you know who. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and are ready to heat in just 2 minutes. There's many options, over 40 options with 8 dietary preferences every week, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto. They even offer wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled throughout the day. I've had these meals quite a few times. I'm sitting there, I'm hungry, I want to feast. You mix it in, you get like some protein, and then maybe you mix in something, you can have a full meal. Whether it's the chorizo, maybe it's the chicken, you can have some pasta. These are all really good meals, and it takes the stress. I'm like, all right, maybe I'm going to go to my mom's house and go grab a Factor meal. I'm like, okay, let me eat that. Eat it up real quick. Gobble, gobble, gobble. It is fantastic. So you're going to eat smart when you go with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege, 50 off. Again, the code is LockedOnCollege, number 50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege, 50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege, 50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, we're cruising on in the final segment here at Locked On UCLA. What is something that is being disrespected right now? I've already talked about the UCLA women disrespect, that they're not the number 1 overall seed, that they're not the number 1 team in the country. A little more consensus. I've talked about it. We're done. We're waiting on that. We'll see if that changes over the next couple of days. We know. Now, let's shift our focus back to the UCLA men's side in terms of disrespect. I thought after UCLA struggles that it would be okay if they're not in the top 25. UCLA sitting there 22-9. They're the 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Needed some help, and they got the double bye. More rest, more recovery, and they can play a little later and play a much better team in the Big Ten tournament that doesn't have their NCAA tournament lives, most likely depending on a win in a Big Ten quarterfinal game. Unless they're playing Northwestern, then they're not going to be playing a team that needs to have that game. So why am I thinking UCLA is disrespected? Let's tell you, out of the teams ranked in the AP Top 25 poll, and you're like, Zach, I've heard this before. Listen, I think I need you to listen. Michigan State, ranked. Clearly, Michigan State, of course, they're really, really good. UCLA beat them, but Michigan State's a top 7 team in the country. Maryland, they're tied with Michigan in the Big Ten standings, but Maryland is number 11 in the country. Michigan, 22, but they're in the top 3 in the country. They're in the top 3 in the Big Ten standings, and I think, in my mind, a dark horse to go on a run in the NCAA tournament. I am very high on the Michigan Wolverines, but they have some issues sometimes late in games where if they struggle, Michigan State's got their number. Okay, but they've got 2 of the most dominant pieces, most exciting pieces, 2 7-footers, a point guard, an athletic big man. I'd be scared of Michigan, but okay. Then you've got, let's go down the Big Ten standings. Those are the top 3. Purdue 13-7 in Big Ten play, went on a lengthy losing streak late, 21-10. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of 10-loss teams this year in the top 25. Purdue's 20th, ranked higher than Michigan, who's 22-9. So if you go strength of record, you go by Big Ten standings. Purdue, behind Michigan in both, they're ahead of Michigan in the rankings overall. They're 20th as a team that's 21-10. That's crazy. I know Purdue beat UCLA, and they're really good. I still think it's crazy how some of this is working out. Then, UCLA in the mix between Purdue and Wisconsin. UCLA won the tiebreaker between those two to be in that 4th spot. So that would mean they're ranked, right? No. Wisconsin, 18th team in the country, 23-8. Okay. Wisconsin's ranked. Purdue's ranked. The 3 teams ahead of UCLA's ranked. So maybe UCLA's just the 6th best team and won themselves a spot because of a tiebreaker, a coin flip, one of those 1, 2, 3 spots down the line in a tiebreaker scenario, right? Well, you're going to want to listen to this again. Illinois and Oregon tied at 12-8 in conference play. Illinois went to Oregon, dominated them earlier in the Big Ten Conference slate. Illinois snuck back in the rankings. They're 20-11. Now, they have dealt with injuries, and when they're healthy, they can be as good as beating UCLA and going up by 17. And UCLA had to fight back. And that's one of the rare times UCLA has lost a game decided by 5 points or less that they didn't choke. UCLA did not choke that game. They lost it fair and square, but they definitely had an opportunity to steal one late in Champaign. But Illinois is ranked 24th in the country with 11 losses. Crazy. Oregon. They had a big run in November. Feast week, beat some good teams, some SEC teams, yada, yada, yada. What did Oregon have to do? Well, they're 23-8, same record as Wisconsin. Nearly a better record than some of those other Big Ten teams. 12-8 in conference. UCLA beat them twice in Eugene and then beat them down in Pauley. Okay. You'd think that wouldn't rank Oregon. Well, from the strength of their early season, a strong finish to the regular season, Oregon is in the top 25. 7 Big Ten teams are ranked, some of which UCLA are ahead of, and have beaten twice with some strong non-conference wins. You're just like, huh? You're like, UCLA is the 4th seed in the Big Ten tournament, and teams as low as 8 in the Big Ten tournament in the standings are ranked. They're all good. There's a whole debate that we had on the Locked On Big Ten squad where I'm back on it again. We had a March Madness debate. We talked about coaches in the hot seat, coaches who might be in the hot seat, yada, yada. You should check it out. It's coming up soon on the Locked On UCLA channel and on the Locked On UCLA audio channels as well. So I encourage you to go listen to those squad shows. I'm back on it. I know I've been busy, but you should go listen to it again. UCLA, man, there's a lot of decent Big Ten teams that can go on a run, but UCLA is one of those that fits the mold of the run of national champions in the last 22 to 23 years. All right, if you don't include the COVID year, with that one wiping out the NCAA tournament, you've got UCLA getting wins over some of those teams in that upper echelon of the Big Ten. You've got strong non-conference wins in neutral sites against teams that are highly ranked. Like Arizona is still receiving more votes than UCLA in the top 25. I don't understand it. UCLA went to the state of Arizona and won. Okay, I know you're going to hold the Purdue loss, definitely the Minnesota loss against UCLA. But when have these other teams not had ugly losses, some of which had back-to-back ugly losses down the stretch just to get UCLA in the top 4? How does that recency bias not help out the Bruins in the bracketology, location, first round, second round opponents, and just sheer national love? Is this another year where UCLA is going to be like, I'm a I'm a down on my luck UCLA fan. We're going to lose in the first round. Oh, wait, they went on a run again. I was so stunned. Well, they've kind of proven it to you. We just kind of forgot. They just can't make late game free throws, and travel's tough in the Big Ten. That is what we will learn in this NCAA tournament. If it was travel losses, a couple of chokes, and they figure it out, or is everybody still sleeping on UCLA when they shouldn't be? It'll be fun. UCLA is going to play the winner of Northwestern and Wisconsin. And we'll find out how that shifts their overall March run, looking like a 6 seed at the worst. And I've said that before. And then next thing you know, they found themselves to be a 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Lots to learn. A lot of Joe Lunardi bracketologies to be released since and in the future. But until then, UCLA's got work to do. Hopefully not too much work, because you don't want to burn yourself out before the real thing. Cronin says they don't hang banners for Big Ten tournament champions, but in order to hang that 12th banner, got to do a little bit of work that can help themselves out more in March with, I guess we are in March, but March Madness overall with location, and a better seed. You got to believe. We have to believe. Which is why you should stay with Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. We got a lot of stuff coming up with March. You want to be here for the UCLA men, the UCLA women, more spring sports, more spring practice for the football team. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Believe and go Bruins.